Welcome to Your Idea Grows Here, brought to you by Yeti, York Entrepreneurship Development Institute, a podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Rick Phillips. And with me today is a friend of mine, someone I've known for a number of years, Wright. She's the founder of YouthSpeak Performance Charity. Let me tell you a little bit about her. I'm going to read to make sure I get this correct. Una's passion to give a meaning to her personal challenges inspired the making of YouthSpeak. Within her family, Una experienced many challenges related to mental health, including the loss of 2 children. She has made it her personal mission to give a message to others of empowerment and to embrace their own story through coping strategies and a positive mindset. A little bit about the organization. YouthSpeak is an organization that provides leadership training to youth with personal experience related to mental health, bullying, and/or addiction, to provide youth-led interactive assemblies and workshops for primary grades to post-secondary, parents, educators, and other caring adults throughout the GTA and Southern Ontario. To date, reaching over 318,000 students, parents, educators, and other caring adults with messages of hope, inclusivity, empathy, and resilience. Una, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here. This is awesome.
Una, this is a mouthful, and I don't mean it from the point of view of me reading it. I mean, there's a lot going on here. There's a lot of emotions here. There's a lot of impact here, right? Tell me a little bit about what YouthSpeak means to you and when you started it, and give us a little bit about from your mouth. What is YouthSpeak all about?
Okay, yeah, great. So it's we're in our 19th year. So that 318,000 plus, it's actually the number's gone up in the last little bit. 19th year of providing these youth-led interactive assemblies, and it just really started from that kind of passionate place, right? A place of wanting to give a meaning to my own story, really. Giving a meaning to the struggles that someone goes through helps to heal. It's right. That self-healing piece, right? And I really wanted to create that same experience for youth who were going through challenges in their lives, and I knew the difference it could make, right? Yeah.
Right. You knew it, and that was the passion and the reason, and you went, and here we are. Right. As you know, Una, our audience members are entrepreneurs, and some of them are experienced, some of them are newbies, different ages, backgrounds, and some would be in for-profits, non-profits, charities, or at least they're thinking about those ideas. So today I do want to talk a little bit about charities, since YouthSpeak is a charity. Before I get into that, I want to talk about the founder's story. Right, as an entrepreneur, you know this, that many people talk about the founder's story, the CEO story. What is the reason why they set up the business? So in your experience, not just with yourself and YouthSpeak, but in other nonprofits, charities you've come in contact with, how important is the founder's story, and how much should the founder share publicly?
Right.
That's a good question for you.
Yeah, that is a good question, and kind of a tough question as well, because that's a very personal thing, right? When I hear kind of the founder's story, whether or not a person has kind of lived experience with whatever it is they're kind of starting up or kicking off, whether or not they have that, as long as there's passion in their heart, I think that's really important, and foundational, because it's a long, hard journey, or for many of us it is a long, hard journey. It most certainly was for me, and sometimes that is the single most important thing that's going to keep you going, right? During those tougher times.
Right. So for you to have the mission at hand, and you know what you're doing, but then there's probably this demand from your audience, from branding, from marketing, to retell. Is that something that, from a business point of view, is a necessary evil, so to speak? Like, this is business, this is marketing. People have to connect with the founder and the founder's story. I mean, I don't want to assume too much. I'm asking you. Would you agree with that?
I think you're right. Yes. Absolutely. It's so funny because I've never been asked that question, but it's an assumption.
Welcome to the show.
Yes, there you go. So there, surprises. But I think that it's always the thing that kind of moves people, right? To connect or donate or whatever it might be, to want to contribute in some way, because they feel that people relate to stories, right? And they relate to kind of a challenging story, and yeah, you have to have that heart-to-heart connection, or you're, yeah, you have to have that heart-to-heart connection.
Right. Well, I want to thank you for being open about that. I'm gonna move off this topic to give your heartstrings a break for a second. Let's talk a little bit about the decision 19 years ago when you decided to do something about this. Did you always know it was going to be a charity? Did you think about a for-profit? Like, how did you get started in terms of the business model?
Yeah, no, didn't think it was going to be a charity. So I actually incorporated it as a business initially, and kind of because I always wanted to be that kind of the driver. I always wanted to be able to kind of own it and be able to make decisions about where I wanted to see it go, but always ran it as a charity anyway. Just always had that kind of flavor. Partnered with an organization that is a charity in order to access funds, for nonprofits. So because that kind of was the case, I ended up incorporating as a charity. Right.
Yeah. And everything's working out well. Let me ask you to give our audience a couple tips. Let's say pros and cons, a couple on each side for running a charity. A couple good things you like about it of this, couple difficulties of that.
Yeah. Okay. So I think there's probably more pros. In my experience, there's been more pros than cons. Pros are definitely access to funding. It was kind of the number one, and support, donations and sponsors, and kind of you can put on fundraising activities, that kind of thing. So that's a huge part of it. A board of directors, right? That's really pivotal and important, because they're those they represent the community, and they just kind of get behind it and draw on their networks to get behind the cause. Those are the key reasons to run it as a charity. And our pros. Cons would be, I guess, as a founder, you have to give up a little piece of the decision making, although that really depends on kind of the board that you attract and create and so forth as well, right? So, did
you stay on the board? Did you make yourself executive director?
Yes, I'm the executive director, so I'm the full-time plus
right.
staff.
So you're the working horse, right?
Yes, very much so.
Right. So you're not on the board. You're executive director?
I'm executive director and on the board. Most executive directors are part of the board, right? So yeah.
Depends, because the board has power to fire an executive director.
Yes, exactly. That's right. Hire, fire, and all of that.
Right.
And that's where you want it, if you're going to go that route, to make sure that you are attracting people who are going to support the cause and are there for the right reason, right?
Right. I'm going to talk to the audience right now just for a second. For those of you that may not know maybe the differences between charities and for-profits, the boards. With a for-profit, the board is looking to make money. They want you to make money. They want the business to make money. They're looking for dividends, payouts, all good. With a charity, a nonprofit or a charity, the boards operate differently. They're not getting any direct reimbursements and payments and payouts. I mean, they might get a free lunch once in a while, or their parking paid, but other than that, they're in it for the heart and soul. And as Una mentioned, we need to pick the right ones because we want to use them for their connections, right? So tell us a little bit about, you don't have to mention names, but how you went about choosing what type of people to have on your board, and the forethought that needs to go into it. And I think that's really interesting for audience members to hear.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually started with 3 people to register as a charity. You only need 3 people.
That's right.
Friends and neighbors. Of course, right? Yeah. I was strategic in it. One friend, he's a lawyer, and so that kind of was a good, skill set to bring. But really, it was just starting from the ground up. Slowly over time, starting to look at the matrix of the board and what skill sets we really needed and where there were gaps. Definitely, folks in business and marketing, and we wanted school board folks, for the nature of our work. Just starting to build that out a little bit, and trying to attract, folks who could bring those skills and knowledge.
So this is an excellent plan on paper, right? Like we're going to do a business, right? And Una's laughing. So it's an interesting idea. Okay, we're going to, a lawyer, somebody from the school board, all that stuff. It sounds great, and it is, and I absolutely say that's great. But were there any challenges where sometimes somebody said, yeah, I'll do it, but then they dropped off, or they didn't want to do work for free? I mean, did you ever have those types of challenging conversations?
Yeah. Absolutely. So anybody who comes into a board of directors is very clear that it is a free thing, right? They can't draw any kind of, remuneration. That's a tongue twister kind of word.
Or just say money.
For it. Money. Okay, there you go. But yes, absolutely. And I think that's very common amongst boards because people are passionate and they're driven, but sometimes aren't always aware of the degree of involvement it can sometimes be. And that is a normal thing for kind of folks to drop off, or their work and their life is going to come first. This is a volunteer thing, right? So there are challenges that way.
Right.
And so to keep folks who are really ready to roll up their sleeves and kind of give that little extra is a challenge for sure.
And how do we keep them when we find the good eggs, right? The people that are just amazing. And it could be a volunteer, not necessarily on the board. It could be a different type of volunteer. But what do you do? What's your advice to keep, especially working in the nonprofit charity world? How do we keep the good eggs when they're not getting paid money?
Right. I think just respect, like respecting kind of their time and what they're giving. But I think really helping people to feel valued and engaged in the organization, and that their knowledge and skills are valued. I think that's one of the most important things for most volunteers. They want to feel like they're contributing something because that's the reason they're there in the first place, right?
I'm going to dig deeper, Una.
Okay.
I'm going to dig deeper because I like what you're saying, but I think some people out there are saying, okay, values, respect, how? So how do we let the volunteers, and we don't have to specifically talk about board or this, just like anybody volunteering, how do we show them value and respect? Do you have any tips and tricks? Is it gift cards? Is it a social night? Is it letters? Like what are some ideas we can throw out to our audience?
So all those things are of course appreciated, but I think maybe not as much because I sit on another board of another charity, so I know from that end the things that I want to know that what I bring is meaningful and is important and is valued, right? And that comes through when we do yearly kind of check-ins, right? My board does, and the board I'm on. You're the check-in to kind of see whether or not my goals are met, or those kind of things, and just kind of see whether it's working, whether the partnership and the relationship is still working, right? And it's an opportunity to have a one-on-one kind of give feedback and that kind of thing. So I think that's probably one of the main ways, and for folks to reach out, right? Like if I know there's information or input that I need on a specific, whether it's a grant or fundraising or whatever it might be, I can reach out to a certain board member for their expertise. I think that's one of the key ways to let people know, right?
Good. So an annual review and feedback. I'm going to throw something out there. I come across this annual review in my private coaching training business a lot in the for-profit world. And the general consensus, especially coming out of my mouth, is that annual reviews are not enough. There should be like regular check-ins, 3 or 4 months. At the end of the year, what happens is some people have this pressure. Oh, I've got to write something. Here's 10 things that are pros. Here's 10 things cons. Here's 6 goals to work on for the next year, etc. Yeah. So can we give some advice about maybe regular check-ins? Maybe they're not the formal annual review, but the regular check-in with the board members, with the volunteers, to say, hey, how's it going? What are your personal goals? What are your professional goals? Right? Is that something that you could ask? And I'm sure you have. I guess I'm leading a little bit with this question because I believe you have done this. You just kind of, maybe it's over a little quick coffee. Maybe it's not a formal meeting, but it's just like, hey, how's it going? Right? You've done this, I'm sure, with the people that you work with.
So when I talk about annual reviews, it's not, there's a formal piece of it, but there's also that informal conversation. I think that gives a lot more value to the information that you're trying to gather than the piece of paper does, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's those conversations, right? Because there's nothing like having a one-on-one conversation with someone.
And why wait to do it once a year?
That's
do
exactly.
It once a
that's
month?
right. Yeah, and because board meetings can be fairly, and we're a pretty chill board, but they can be fairly formal meeting. Well, they're structured formally, right? But those so you don't get that same one-on-one conversation, right? And so it's important to have those.
I remember I was interviewing volunteers for a nonprofit I'm connected with, NCCA Canada, National Communication Coaching Association of Canada. And I remember in my mind having this idea, I wanted to ask them what are their goals, right? So I'd ask them, like, what are your goals? Why are you volunteering? Professional goals, personal goals. And I found it interesting. There's one young lady that I met, and she was literally like, just tell me what to do. I'm like, no, you tell me what you want to do.
Yeah.
She's like, no, just like, what do you want me to do? Then I'm like, what are your skills? Well, she's like, well, I can do social media. And I said, well, do you want to do social media? She says, well, I can. And I said, that's not the question. Like, are you going to enjoy it because you're doing social media and you really want to do that more and maybe expand it? I'm happy to give that role to you. Or you're bored of it and you'd rather try something else. And there's another volunteer I talked to, and it was about public speaking, and this connects to your business, where this lady said to me, she said, like, I want to practice public speaking. I'm a bit nervous speaker. I think by volunteering at this coaching association, I'll get the opportunity to practice public speaking. So I really love that feedback from the beginning, understanding what are their personal and professional goals, right? Yeah. So I'm going to draw this back to you. Your organization, you deal with a lot of speakers, right? YouthSpeak, you're dealing with speakers all the time, right? How do you vet them? How do you get those conversations? Do they come to you? Do you send out word? How do you get your speakers?
So we a number of all those ways, right? So, through it might be a school that has a student, or a former student, and that they, and they, a guidance counselor, for example, knows they've been through some challenges and they've made some changes or whatever in their lives, and the guidance counselor says, I know a great program that you can reach out to. Youth Employment Services,
Yes, Toronto.
Yes, actually, I can't believe that didn't come to my mind first, because that's our most recent. A lot of our youth come through Youth Employment Services. Networking and word of mouth, seeing it on social media, that kind of thing. And in terms of vetting, it's a conversation as well. It really is. It's a conversation initially. Of course, we do the resume and the more formal interview, but it's always kind of that initial conversation, just to kind of, I've been doing it a long time, so I can really get a sense of people and where in their readiness for this. Right. It's a big job they have, our youth. Right. They're sharing their stories. They're out there. They have a responsibility to the kids that they're speaking to, and they have to do it in a way that's going to empower them and not trigger and that kind of thing. There's and we also have to align all our content with school boards and all that kind of stuff, right? So there's a big responsibility on them. Right. I don't know if I answered your question.
Of course you did. Absolutely. Yeah. And it allows me to ask another question, of course. So the interesting thing is, and for the listeners out there, pay attention, and maybe you want to rewind it and play it again if you need to. Una was talking about, how to vet someone as a speaker, but you'll notice that Una also talked about the organization and its goals, right? The organization has to align itself with the school boards. The organization has a responsibility. So even if you have someone who's a great volunteer, in this case a speaker, but in your business, ladies and gentlemen, whatever it might be, if that volunteer accidentally on purpose reflects badly on your company, you have to fire them. You have to fire someone who's not being paid or not hire them. So it is part of the business, right? It is part of being an entrepreneur. Is it not that we have to sometimes, let someone down, or maybe not hire them or not let them go? Maybe they've got a great story, just tell them you just can't have them on stage because they're not doing the right thing. And that's got to be heartbreaking. Do you have any words of wisdom around that conversation, around that experience? Yeah,
so actually there's two kind of answers here. One is, and just to clarify, our board chair is very good at having those really good, honest conversations and just get a sense of what their goals are and what they want to bring and what they want to get out of their experience as a volunteer board member. Our speakers are actually paid. They're paid staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So same process, but even more accountability, really, because they are paid staff. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. That's good for them.
Yeah. Yes.
Great.
Yes. Yeah. It's they deserve it, they need it, and I need them to be able to kind of make this their priority and a commitment, right?
Right. And that's a conversation as well about, maybe it's a graduation from volunteer to part-time to full-time, and that's also something we can give people some encouragement, like, hey, if this works out, there could be some paid opportunities, and that's also good. But at the end of the day, you want to find someone who has the right heart, especially when you're dealing with a charity or nonprofit, right?
Yeah, you really do. And that's, I guess, why that conversation is the most important thing, because you can pick up on that kind of that vibe, right? Of whether or not somebody has got the heart for it, or whether or not they're just looking kind of for any job, or where they're coming from. You can sense it. So that's why that kind of whether it's Zoom these days or a phone call or whatever it might be is really important.
Good. I want to talk about your business. I want to talk about the school board. There are, as our listeners probably know, I work at Yeti, of course, and you went through Yeti as well, and so we have the Yeti connection. There's actually a lot of people, entrepreneurs that come through Yeti that somehow want to be connected to the school board, whatever region they might live in, because they see that as an opportunity to get access to, that system. Yeah. Talk a little bit about how to, quote unquote, get into the school board.
Yeah, I know it's a big question, and we were, and there's not an easy answer, and there's no kind of really nice answer.
It's an honest one. It may not be a good one, but it's an honest one.
Yeah, we've been around long enough that a lot of school boards, we were kind of on their list just by the very nature that they know us well enough, right? Some school boards have, and we have a number of school boards we work with across Southern Ontario. There's some school boards that have a more formal process. Many of them are moving in that direction, right? So anybody can kind of do that, apply and try and get on their list, but they do have there's a long lineup, right? Of folks trying to get in. Some, not all, and maybe I should say this on the air or not, but for the school boards that don't have a formal process yet, if you can get into like a classroom or a school, that's how we were blessed to be able to do that, and kind of make it a little bit of a name for yourself and get, from the door kind of thing. It's almost like, approaching it from that end versus top down, right? Because top down is a lot harder. I love that you said that. I mean, it's giving us ways to think about, like, there is the top down and then there's the bottom up, and it's it's a hustle, right? Entrepreneurs are hustlers. Like, maybe if one door doesn't work, you try a different door, or you tunnel under the door. So it is good advice. I'm glad you mentioned that. The benefits of being a charity versus a for-profit when trying to work with the school board. Right. I think in my humble opinion, I'd say a charity, definitely. Yes, a benefit. I never thought about that. I don't know 100%, but that's my sense. That yes, a charity. Yeah, because you've got some, a little bit more accountability. Around your messaging and what you're bringing.
So if there's an entrepreneur out there who has a for-profit business or business idea, but it somehow connects to the school and they want to connect to the school, they can either set up a nonprofit branch or connect with an established charity or nonprofit to try to get their products or service into the school. Good. All the tips we're getting here. I want to talk about expansion. Again, just because we're talking about a charity doesn't mean we can't think, about expansion and growing the business, right? So when we talk about that word, this idea of expansion, what have you done in the 19 years, and where's the next steps for YouthSpeak?
So kind of you remind me of kind of an important thing that I could share is that we're an employment social enterprise, and that's another kind of way in, and I don't know if folks know what that is.
Why don't you tell them?
Yeah. So it's an employment social enterprise. It can be a for-profit or a non-profit organization that it hires people who might be facing barriers to employment of some kind, and so that's the employment piece, and then the social enterprise piece is that there's kind of the delivery of whatever service it is adds value to the community, right? So we hire youth who have lived experience with mental health and other challenges to deliver our youth-led interactive presentations in schools around important topics, right? So another example would be a restaurant who hires people with lived experience or disabilities or whatever to be and they get trained on the job, and they are the servers and the cooks and all of that. So that's another example. And there's lots of funds that can be accessed when you're an employment social enterprise, right? So.
And we want to expand. How would we expand?
Yes, expand. I knew there was another part to that question.
I will keep you on track. That's my job. That is my job.
So we had a very, very long climb up the mountain, very long climb. So it was only in the last couple of years, I guess with COVID, big dip, like many folks, but then it was almost a gift because youth mental health it was already an emerging issue, right, over the last several years, but more so, it tremendously, right, since COVID hit. So we were able to access a little bit more funding, through the government and various other sources. We're in the midst of a trillion grant right now, at the tail end of a trillion grant. So that it actually was a blessing to us in terms of being able to get out there more. Right. We've also, as a result of that, we were able to expand our team. And the other kind of emerging issue that's happened over the last couple of years is racism and homophobia and all the inclusivity pieces. So we've also expanded our kind of range of topics to include that. There's so much intersection between mental health with youth and racism and homophobia. So we now provide, in fact, it's probably head-to-head with mental health as our number one topic, anti-racism presentations. Wow. Yeah, so that's definitely a way we've expanded. And our team, period, right? Before they were all kind of contract, occasional staff, and I was only full-time. Now more of them have moved into more permanent positions.
Right. And COVID, as you said, it affected a lot of businesses and people. Of course, there's a big dip, but something good can come out of it, or there are grants available, or just different ways of thinking. The entrepreneur has to be nimble, right?
Oh boy, you really do. Yeah, and just noticing kind of, we have our heart for our product or service, but, being responsive to what the needs are and to what is there's a demand for, right? I
always do this, the fingers on the pulse, right? I always say you have to have the fingers on the pulse of your customer. Yeah. In your case, it's customer, beneficiary, sponsor, government grant giver. Yeah. It's all those different types of mouths to feed, so to speak, and you have to have a different message for all of them. And that's got to keep you busy, right?
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And at the same time, staying true to your mission.
Right.
Because you don't want to be, like I found myself doing that years ago, right? Where you're just trying to bounce around and be whatever anybody wanted you to be, right? In order to survive. Yeah. But really being true to your mission, your vision, right? Yes. While you're trying to kind of massage all of that, and work within the kind of the realm is a challenge for sure.
And to come full circle, I would say that especially as a nonprofit or charity, the mission and values has to be crystal clear to you, and it has to be able to be understood by the audience, whichever audience member, what that mission and value is all about, right?
Yeah.
So people may pull you in different directions, but you have to stay focused as you expand.
Yeah, you really do, and stay true to it. Yeah.
Excellent. Una, this has been a pleasure. Time flies when you're having fun, and when you're going deep on the entrepreneurial journey. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your journey with us, and I've learned a bit about you as well today, and it's a good feeling to know that there's people out there doing something good in the world, and it's good to know that founders have their ups and downs and their stories, but chin up there, everyone. Make sure that you don't let COVID knock you out, right?
Yes.
You're down, but you're not out. You get up and you get going, and you find the ways to expand differently, and it's a really great story. Thank you again, Una. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick.
Ladies and gentlemen, Una Wright, founder of YouthSpeak Performance Charity. She's our guest today. Please pass this podcast on to your friends and family and fools. Anyone in your circle who may be interested in entrepreneurship. We're happy to have them join our club. Okay, that's it. I'm the host, Rick Phillips. Thank you. Good night. Good hunting. May the force be with you. Sayonara. Hope that you subscribe to our podcast. You can subscribe on Apple and Spotify podcasts. We're going to have weekly episodes. I will see you next week, or you'll hear me next week anyway. Join our conversation. Our hashtag is Your Idea Grows Here.